Welcome to the Winning E-commerce Experience Show, where it's all about creating a brand that your customers love so they keep coming back. This show is brought to you by DataQ. Your store experience begins with your homepage. DataQ improves your conversion rate up to 30% by showing each visitor a personalized homepage based on their interest. And now, your host, Shahram Anver.
All right. Hello, everyone. Today's guest is an e-commerce veteran. He's worn pretty much all the hats you can think of in this industry. He's a public speaker, ran his own SEO, SEM agency. He's now the stakeholder of an open source e-commerce software called Solidus and runs a multi-million-dollar automotive online retailer called moddedeuros.com. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Dawes. Welcome to the show, Sean.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So look, we were having a really good conversation just earlier about like this madness with the pandemic and how all this stuff has just changed everything we thought we knew about this industry, right? So how are you guys sort of thinking about this at Modded Euros? I'm sure it's changed a lot.
Actually, to be honest, it's quite the opposite. One of the things, I think the first thing that I have to kind of preface this from, because we all can't ignore, obviously, the health impact that it's have all over the world. So, anything around this conversation is really just business minded. I don't want to kind of ignore the fact that there's clearly a priority around everyone's health. But from a pure business standpoint, what I've seen kind of in the marketplace, not only from automotive e-commerce, but I'm connected to many stores in various verticals, is it's forcing almost everyone onto the same playing field, right? Mm-hmm. So you have, and I'll probably have to exclude 2 or 3 retailers from that example, obviously being Amazon and Walmart, who are literally just dominating right now in their own markets. But if you remove those 2 from the rest of e-commerce, so the 2% of the revenue that's left for the rest of us, just kidding, it's really taking a level playing field, right? So what you're seeing startups who have been extremely nimble and kind of used to working in the trenches, so to speak, are the ones who are actually the most comfortable in the current situation, right? Obviously you have local, depending on your jurisdiction of where you're located, you have essential businesses and stuff like that, creating certain restraints on business operations. But for the most part, e-commerce across the United States is still fully functional. I mean, you have the distancing and stuff of that nature that's kind of putting strain on warehouses and offices that are being forced to work remotely. But you're seeing businesses that are massive sizes. I mean, you're talking 100, 200, 300 million businesses that are now having to slash workforces because their revenue is dropping significantly. So they're being forced to operate like startups, and they have no idea how to do it anymore. So it's creating not only challenges for these large retailers, it's actually on the flip side, creating massive opportunity for startups who are positioned to, I hate to say it, used to working the worst conditions. It's literally shifting people who are used to extreme periods of stress, whether it be financial or resource constraints,
right?
And they are just seizing the opportunity left and right, which is extremely interesting because whoever is going to weather the storm, I feel there's going to be a huge hockey stick growth rate for those companies on the exit of this.
Right. So I like how you started, how you stated that, because it's a very positive note. I guess really what you're saying is that anyone who's able or built the processes up to be able to adapt very quickly and roll with the punches is going to do well. So it's not like everyone should just give up and go home. It's really about getting serious now and figuring out, okay, so what's the strategy?
But you actually hit a good point there. Is one of the things that I'm seeing is, obviously, and like I said, I keep feeling like I have to preface this so I don't get a whole flood of emails just yelling at me. But, if you are sick or a family member, friend, that's utmost priority. But if you currently are Netflix and chilling at home, you're an absolute idiot, because a lot of people, I think, are shutting down because they don't know what to do. And what's happening is those who are comfortable in the situation are literally grinding the extra hours and making it happen. And I think that's what's part of the opportunity, is not only these large corporations that are taking massive cuts, but it's also people who just don't know what to do in times of stress and just kind of sit down and do nothing and wait for someone else to kind of figure it out for them.
Right. So Let's say you're actually running, say, small to mid-sized company. What would you recommend that they actually start doing? So clearly, they need to actually, get off their butts and get to work. But there's so many processes that they could be potentially looking at. Which one would you actually recommend that they start with?
Obviously varies by business type, right? It's a very broad question that you ask there, because I've been taking calls and, anything from other hard goods retailers to custom printing type products to, clothing, apparel and stuff like that. So some of these answers vary by industry, right? Because you also have limitations. But I think one of the first things any business needs to do is sit down and you triage what you have, right? And I hate to use analogies to armies and stuff like that, because those people risk their lives and, are true value. But a business is a team ultimately at the end of the day, and you have resources. And that is both your offense and your defense. And you kind of have to take a list. You have to say, what resources do I have? What resources have I lost potentially? And are there any allies that are out there that I can kind of partner with? And I think most businesses don't even kind of take that kind of check in place. What they're doing is immediately saying, oh my God, my revenue is down 25, 50% or whatever. Let's just start slashing. Before taking a list of saying, okay, look, let's just pump the brakes. Let's reevaluate who do we have on the team, not only personnel wise, resources. And then when I say resources, I not only mean people, tech, I mean, if you're e-com, you're looking at, okay, what visitors do I have? What visitors do I have, and what similar interests do they have? For example, I'll give you an example of our own business, which you mentioned at the beginning, Modded Euros. We're direct to consumer online retail. We don't do installations. Well, I could say to myself, shops are struggling right now. Is there any way we have the eyeballs, we have the traffic, can we benefit by forming partnerships with local shops in each of these territories? And is there a way that we can leverage our assets to help them and profit both businesses? I was going to say, and I think most business owners, both small to medium to even large, aren't used to thinking outside the box.
Sure. I think you made a really good point there, that the question was very broad, because I think it makes sense for us to segment a little bit, right? So, maybe we can try to come up with, say, three segments. Either your business, for some completely fortuitous reason, what you do is completely aligned with the demands of COVID. So maybe you're doing groceries, or you're selling health items like masks. So then, you're in that small minority that's doing very well. And then, you've got sort of that second segment. So maybe like companies like yourself, Modded Euros, where it's not exactly aligned to exactly where the demand strikes, but you do have some ability to rethink your business model and think, how can you adjust to the current climate? And then I guess you've got that last segment, which we're going to see, I guess we'll talk a little bit more about, where they've been completely 100% brick and mortar, and now they're just sort of all trying to get online, because as quarantine and all this stuff starts hitting, they realize that they might not be able to actually go to that physical store to sell. Would you add any other segments to that? Or would you agree with that sort of list of segments?
Yeah, for sure. And I think the largest segment there that has opportunity, and I've spoken to a few stores giving that exact suggestion, is the store or the online retailers that can connect to the brick and mortar that can't get online. Yes. So, I hate to give an exact use case because it's a fantastic one on the recommendation that I gave. I'll give you an example that's already out there on the market, right? Sure. Is the service market. So I'm sure everyone's familiar with Wayfair, right? So Wayfair exists, they sell furniture. And there's obviously handyman, repairman type businesses, or I shouldn't say man, I should say, handy person businesses exist, and they're definitely hurting right now, because it's a service, direct to service, unless it's an essential plumbing, electrical, or something like that. Right now, those markets are down. So there's a company that exists currently, and I have no affiliation whatsoever with them. I've just been a customer, is Havenly, right? So if you're familiar with Havenly is a design-focused kind of tech-based platform where it connects interior designers with end users being customers, where you can snap a photo of your living room, and an interior designer will design it, 3D lay it, and they basically give you referral links to Wayfair, and then you purchase your furniture. Orders come to your house, and they actually have JV with Handy, which Handy is basically a tech-based platform that service people like, anyone can kind of sign up for, excuse me, and they'll come and do the installation of the furniture for you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a perfect example in an economy right now where you have a service market that's hurting, and you have a tech heavy that's kind of furniture is a very direct, well, it used to be at least, a very direct, I need to go sit in it and stuff like that. And they're connecting all the dots. Now, granted, they have a whole bunch of issues with their tech integrations because I was a customer, but that's a prime example. And there's plenty of other markets in this space. I was just talking to a tattoo shop owner locally here that's just like dead. Hair salons are dead. All these service restaurants are dead. Now, granted, if you take a look at it, that's why you're seeing a rise in your Grubhub, your DoorDash, and all those type of businesses, because they're the only revenue stream for these businesses right now.
Yeah.
And for e-com stores that do have the ability to connect themselves to a service anchor, you can form a partnership. And, even though it's economic times, there's no reason not to ask for compensation because it creates long-term wealth in the long run.
What I really like about what you just said is that essentially we're talking about collaboration, right? So it's like when when all the chips are down, if you can think of something that you have that somebody else needs, and then you can identify something that person needs, which you need. In this case, like you just talked about the service industries, that could be an amazing partnership. Now, in business as usual, that's also amazing, but especially in times like these, there are ways for you to get out of whatever hole you're in if you can find somebody to help you do that.
Right. And, just, I guess for audience perspective, I have no affiliation with DataQ and, from a business standpoint, but I mean, that's where, if you're a small business, you can obviously do this manually on site with e-com stores, or if you have the capability to implement technology which has data relationship management capabilities, such as DataQ, there's potential opportunities to automate these type of processes. If you have that big of a network in order to do it on a larger scale. But even if you're a small e-com business, there's opportunity at every level of revenue. And especially for the small businesses, like a lot of businesses, I mean, I'm sure their rent, could only be a couple $1,000s a month. I mean, you can truly help someone out with just a few small moves.
Yeah. The first segment which you talked about, where you've sort of got your products that are perfectly, let's call them segment A, perfectly aligned with the COVID crisis. I don't think they really need any help. We just talked about what segment B could be doing, which is where you're kind of, you're not doing something totally aligned, but you've got an e-commerce business. So I guess the word on the street right now is, okay, collaborate, find ways to adjust. And now let's talk about sort of that last segment where, and I guess we talked about this a little bit earlier, where you said, the really big guys who probably making 90-95% of their revenue on physical retail and just maybe tiny e-commerce presence. You've got a whole bunch of people on that segment. So some of them are totally local businesses that they've never done anything online before. And you've got sort of the bigger companies as well. What would you recommend that these guys do? Would you recommend that they get online ASAP, or would you recommend that they sort of hold back a little bit? Like, how would you approach it?
From a small business perspective, trying to go online, well, it's tough because you have to take a look at your resources that are available to you, right? I mean, I would like to say for the most part, anybody can go online now, but I do understand the capabilities of many individuals and, using technology. But I think that's where it boils down to relationships, right? I mean, I think an underlying message I'm going to say over this kind of podcast is, no matter what your skill set, you still can pick up a phone. You can still strike some form of deal. If you don't have the technology, background, but you have a awesome product and you're a local business, strike a deal with someone who has the skills that you don't have, because someone is struggling somewhere, and bartering has been around far longer than I've been around. You know what I mean? And I don't know if debate how far back it goes, but it's hundreds of years at least, like people have always been like, I got this, you got that, let's trade,
Right.
I'm sure we've all done it as kids.
Yeah. I mean, you could even just post the idea on LinkedIn saying, look, hey, I've got this product and people really love it.
Yeah.
I need some help getting a website up, something like that, right?
It's
even as simple
definitely
as that.
I think the tough part right now is looking through the clutter, right? So you have people that are preying on others. You have a lot of people who have no idea what they're doing as well. And, I hate to use these words, but there's going to be winners and there's going to be losers through this.
Sure.
So you need to be right in your decisions. I mentor for here in Philadelphia, there's something called Philly Startup Leaders, basically a local organization of, young entrepreneurs trying to start businesses and stuff like that. And my mentor, a student came to me and says, "Oh, look at this business opportunity. This guy reached out to me on LinkedIn, and I read it and I'm like, they're selling you affiliate marketing. And the thing is, a lot of times people who aren't experienced in getting pitched, I get pitched nonstop, whether it be tech, it's, marketing companies, this, that, other, I just, delete.
Sure.
But for people who are in a vulnerable state and don't have experience dealing with stressful times, they might I hate to say that, they might, execute on something that they shouldn't be executing on right now because they're desperate. You need to be able to maintain a perfect calm mindset and make a smart decision, a smart calculated decision. And one of the things that I say over and over again, and anybody who does business with me has probably heard me say this, is play chess, not checkers. Think 5 steps ahead of every move you're making. Don't just keep trying to squash the next thing in front of you by making a quick decision.
I like that. I mean, especially because e-commerce, it's not just saying you're putting something online and people are going to come and buy it. Those are the good old days. E-commerce is actually incredibly complicated. So I guess if you are listening in and you want to get online, if you don't have the background to do it, then just like Sean said, try to find someone in your network that you trust that can actually help you through it, right? You don't want to be making any panic decisions.
Right. I mean, thankfully, there are resources out there. I know DataQ integrates with Shopify, and Shopify is extremely cheap, and you can just use free templates and stuff like that. But like you said, I mean, you could spend all the time sitting there figuring it out, or even going on Upwork or any of these other external sources that are pretty cheap for talent to get a store live. But it's not just get the products live and you sit back and here comes all the money. That's not even going to happen. So oftentimes it's not necessarily getting a store live. It's everything around the whole business.
And arguably, you could probably say that it's going to get harder because you mentioned Shopify. They've just said that they're going to have a 90-day free trial now. So the amount of new stores coming online is, I'm sure it's skyrocketing. I mean, we've seen the data with people installing our software, and a lot of them are actually probably just started the store a few days ago, which means that you're probably going to have to work even harder to stand out if you're yet another new store that's coming up, right?
Yep, absolutely.
So let's switch gears a little bit because I want to talk a little bit about Solidus. I know you're a stakeholder and it's an e-commerce platform. And, we were just talking about this, that you have weekly chats with lots of different merchants. Are there any interesting data points that you've seen over the last few weeks? It obviously is different depending on the kind of industry, but let's talk about that segment B where it's not really totally aligned with food or anything like essentials, but just general sort of products. Have you seen anything interesting with what merchants have been talking to you about in terms of performance?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the interesting things that I'm seeing currently, just from a platform standpoint, is the rise in the attention of developers that are continuing to at least look at the open source platforms and want to support the community. I know one of the things that actually we immediately started talking about was putting kind of like an action plan in place and start compiling resources that we can provide our own community right now, whether it be, being an open source platform. One of the things you kind of strive for is a community, right? Because everyone from all over the world contributes to open source code. Obviously, we have QA processes in place, and there's a core team of developers that manage anything that actually makes it to the platform, but there's still plenty of integrations or other projects that are on Solidus that are being developed from devs all over the world. And you're not necessarily seeing a decrease. I mean, are there stores that are on this platform as well as other platforms that have gone under? Absolutely. Absolutely. Even though, like you mentioned, Shopify has 90-day trial, there are absolutely stores that have gone bankrupt in the past 2 weeks, of decent size. We do have stores like Casper, for instance. They went public not too long ago. So I think what's interesting is just looking at our own platform is the community involvement. We have a lot of developers over in Italy right now that are bunkered down. The core team from Solidus is situated over in Italy. And it's, it's very, very humbling to see, what it's like. We're on weekly calls and you get to see insight into how those individuals are, facing all that over there. And you have, your hearts go out to them and the team over there at Nebulab. But it's just people are banding together, and I think that's even outside of Solidus, right? It's even within companies, and that's kind of what I talk about with other partnerships. Just even for-profit businesses, you're seeing people helping people. I can't tell you how many emails, and I have to, I can't necessarily share confidential, details on the companies, but things that would never have been discussed are now being shared over email without confidentiality agreements or anything of that nature, because people know they just want to help each other. Because at the end of the day, if you're going to sit there and worry about bureaucracy, it's just not going to work. And, you need to band together. And I think that's what we're seeing within our own community. And I can guarantee you're seeing it in other tech or dev-oriented communities, because you're clearly seeing it in the hospital networks and even in the public, with the hospitals that are being shortages of, let's say, masks. You're seeing the general public saying, okay, we're going to do something. Now, I'm no medical professional, but people are making masks, whether that's good or not. I mean, you're seeing people band together. And I think you're seeing that in the open source community, even outside of that, with people who are 3D printing. So as far as trends go for Solidus, I think it's the same thing that you're seeing with every other market. The people that can are banding together and trying to push forward despite the economic and health challenges that the world's being faced with.
Are there any specific features or anything like that you guys are thinking about to help merchants respond? So for instance, I've seen like with Modded Euros, I think you guys have done a great job where at the top, you guys have got a banner that says, hey, COVID-related updates, our deliveries are going well. I mean, one of the things I've been hearing a lot on the few episodes we've been doing is communication is very important. But, is there anything else that you guys have been thinking about that maybe other merchants should also be thinking about?
Yeah, from a retailer standpoint, I mean, I think you can break that answer up into two, right? You have, what are you going to do for the customers? And then what are you going to do for the business, right? And then the business is kind of a trickle down type of flow chart. For the customers, obviously we sell automotive parts, so there are certain parts that are essential to operating a vehicle. If someone's car goes down or something of that nature. So obviously we want to get stuff shipped as fast as possible. It's not necessarily like, vetting them, saying like, is your car broken, or are you just doing this while you're at home? Because although, obviously you want to have people have vehicles that are operational, I think one massive thing, and not trying to digress off of e-commerce, but one of the massive things at play here is mental health, right? So if by someone who's, at home isolated, they have the ability to, tinker on their car and do something, I think that is important. I mean, you're seeing a rise of people trying to find things to do together, as families are quarantined and things of that nature. So it's definitely important to kind of convey everything you can to the customer in terms of what you're doing for sanitation purposes or, speed of delivery, so customers can prepare for that. But then on the business side, and this goes back to the platform side, is you need to focus on either maintaining and or growing your business, because you not only have, as a founder, you not only have your own family's income relying on it, but everyone who's employed by you relies on you. And I think many people need to realize that when making any decision they make. And, that's why, at least from my perspective, when you look at the platform of, say, Solidus, there's heavy focus as of late, I think, towards revenue driving factors and things that can either streamline or automate processes that would reduce unneeded expenses, right?
Right.
So, it's definitely a multi.
A lot of reflection.
Yeah. Exactly. There's a lot of thought that has to go into it, and you have to make those decisions fairly quickly.
Yeah, I mean, talking about revenue driving activities, one of the, I think one of the trends we're going to see is that as people are spending more time at home, obviously the online usage is going to go up quite a lot, and it seems like sort of a pivotal moment for e-commerce in general, because I think there's a huge segment of the population that still does not shop online. And now they're kind of in a position where they have to shop online. So we're probably gonna start seeing pretty much every e-commerce site where you're gonna have a segment of people that have probably not shopped online before that have just come into your site now because they have to. Is that something which you guys have been thinking about at Monoduros, or is that something which you think there should be, maybe people should just sort of sit back and sort of see how it goes, or should they maybe start already looking at UX and things like that to try to make the navigation simpler, just to let those people also come in and sort of spend money on your site?
Yeah, so there's two things in regards to that. The first one is absolutely. People who traditionally shopped in brick and mortar potentially are going to be forced to go online. So you have to be prepared for those. And then in certain markets, for instance, automotive, which is a highly technical type of segment where people need to know, at least for the European sector, they need to know year, make, model. Sometimes they need to know engine codes. It can get kind of complicated. That's a whole new challenge of dealing with more, let's say, automotive uneducated customers. But twofold, and the reason why I stress heavily on forming joint ventures or partnerships with the service-based or brick and mortars now is because if you can align your e-com business now, what potentially is predicted to happen when the dust settles is you're going to see a slight swing in the opposite direction, right? So you have a swing into the e-com side now because pretty much consumers are forced into e-commerce right now.
Yeah.
But when everyone's allowed back outside, what you're going to see, and nobody necessarily can honestly say how much, you're going to see a swing back towards traditional retail, because people want to get out. They don't care. They just want to get out. They're tired of being locked up, so to speak.
Right.
So if you can form those strategic partnerships now, you're not only playing the offense now, you have your defense already ready and I'm not even going to name a time because I'm no expert.
Yeah, I mean, so
and
I guess that goes back to
move.
your chess versus checkers analogy, right? Think long term.
Exactly.
I really like how you put that. So figure out the short term change, but then also just anticipate the long term change and try to be ready for that too.
Correct. Long term creates wealth. Short term just pays the bills.
I like that. I mean, that's a good segue to sort of my last question, which is, so obviously we're not experts on the health situation, but from what you've seen from e-commerce, this is really unprecedented. What do you expect? Not going to hold you to it because every prediction is obviously going to be, it's so volatile. But what would you expect for US e-commerce in the next 3 months?
So this is going to vary by market, but and I can't name the retailer, but one thing that I'm noticing that is extremely alarming is you're seeing people make marketing-based, my background being PPC, or not PPC necessarily, my co-founders are PPC heavy, and myself on the organic search side. But what you're seeing a lot of people cut spend now, right? And let's just take PPC, and that can be social, that could be AdWords or whatever.
Sure.
You have what's considered a time to purchase, right? And this metric, time to purchase, varies by industry drastically. Let's say it depends on hard good type. It depends on everything. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, almost every industry, you're not having impulse buying. And there's exclusions, such as people who, say, if you target on Instagram, sometimes people impulse buy and stuff like that, depending on an average order value. But traditionally, there's a time to purchase. That could be 30, 60, 90 plus days, depending on the product type, right?
Sure.
Because customers need to do research, et cetera. We could see, so if businesses are trimming now, let's say day one is today, you're saving your short-term expenses now, right? But you're killing your long-term revenue. So let's say today for 30 days, you cut your PPC spend, right? So for 30 days, you save X, whatever you were spending or whatever you trimmed. Say day 31, everything's back in business. And obviously this is the most opportunistic type of comment and everyone's healthy, so, right? Yeah. You're going to pay for that for months and months and months, that bad decision. Because that's how e-com works.
Your competitor was going at it for those 30 days.
Well, not necessarily that, but if you think about it, you just stopped 30 days of education of your customer. And depending on what your time to purchase is, you could feel that 1 30-day window for 3 to 6 months impact on your top line revenue. And on top of it, if there's a massive swing, you're already in a position on a downward position in a time of upswing. So everyone else who positioned themselves properly is on an upswing and capturing market share. and you're fighting a downward swing that you made a short, fast decision for 30 days.
And I guess it also falls in if you think about it, that maybe CPCs in some industries are actually falling because the amount of inventory, like the amount of impressions, are actually probably going up as more people are spending time online. And just like what you notice, if you have this natural tendency of people to just cut their marketing budgets, then you might end up competing. All these keywords that you previously could not afford may suddenly be affordable now.
Yeah, and I can speak from experience outside of a pandemic, and let's say we've advised for startups who have done significantly well. When we've had successful PPC strategies put in place, and what happens is, let's say they run into a fulfillment issue, and they're like, "Oh my God, we can't fulfill. Pull back on PPC." You do, and you pay for it for months.
Right.
And I think that's what people don't understand, because they don't step back and look at a high level at their business. They think short term, how can I slash, or how can I make fast decisions over short term, versus thinking on a long term play. So although you say, do I think it could be 3 months, 12 months or whatever, to me, it's more of what happens when day one comes back again, right? Because at the end of the day, e-commerce is, as it looks right now, is going to be the last revenue that exists to be cut off, right? So obviously if they cut off e-commerce, nobody's making any money, so it's just going to be ballots for everybody. So I'm less really concerned about that, because e-com is the last end all be all right now that's left.
Yeah, and I think that's a very positive note to end things. I think the broader message, and I really like that, right? You're basically saying, hey, like wherever you can, try to collaborate, because we're in this together. And yes, figure out your short term, but don't forget your long term. Is that fair?
Absolutely.
Perfect. Well, Sean, this has been a pleasure talking to you. How can people get in touch with you after the show? I'm sure if they have any other questions or things like that.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, anybody's welcome to drop me an email. I can try to respond as quickly as possible. It's just Sean, SEAN, at moddedeuros.com. And that's MODDEDEUROS.com.
Perfect. Thanks, Sean.
Absolutely.
You're still here, which means you definitely enjoyed that conversation. This is a special COVID-19 e-commerce mini-series to help small business merchants out there get prepared. We're doing a lot more of these, so be the first to know whenever there's a new episode. Just follow DataCue, that's DATACUE, on Twitter, Facebook, or LinkedIn. Stay safe out there, everybody. Till next time, this is Sharam.